Welcome to Ortho Insider Season 2. This is the Canadian Orthopedic Association's podcast that goes behind the scenes of orthopedics in Canada. Today we have a very special guest because he is a wonderful mentor and friend of mine. We have Dr. Kishore Mulpuri. He is the head of the Department of Orthopedics at University of British Columbia, and he's also a previous ABC Fellow, a previous past president of the Canadian Orthopedic Association, as well as the founder of the Hippie Lab. And he has a major impact on global orthopedics, and that's what we'll be chatting with you about today. So thank you so much for being here.
Adrian, thanks for having me. Thanks to COA. Thanks to Jenna for the amazing work that you guys are doing and leading the communications and connecting Canada with the rest of the world. Thank you.
It's a pleasure, yeah. Our first question to all of our guests is always, how did you get involved in orthopedics in the first place?
Well, this is an interesting story. I'm one of the three brothers, youngest of the three. My dad made these gas tankers. If you go to Shell gas station, the big tanker that comes, that's what he did for business. And he had two of those businesses, and like any typical Indian dad, and he thought for the third son, he needs to come up with a new business. He didn't want to build another plant. And so he forced me to be a doctor. I actually wanted to be a mechanical engineer. And when I got into med school, unlike most people that celebrate and are happy about, and I actually got into medicine very reluctantly.
Interesting.
But I'm so glad my dad forced me to be a doctor.
Yeah.
Closest thing to mechanical engineering is orthopedics.
That's right.
So that's how I got into orthopedics.
Amazing. So how did you change that mindset then from having this kind of morose acceptance into orthopedics to really making it something of your own and thriving?
Well, I think, in general, that's what I tell people. I mean, there are things you plan in life. There are things that happen to you. And I think acceptance is number one. And trying to be probably really involved and enjoy whatever you do. And for me, you've known me over the years, and there's nothing that I do in moderation. If I get involved, I really get involved. And so when I was in med school, I just wanted to be a good medical student because my dad actually paid for me to go to med school, just like people like you went to UK to do med school. So same way for me, I went to a private medical school. So I wanted to really be a good student, and because my dad was actually paying for me to go to med school, or my parents.
Yes.
But once I got into orthopedics, is where my light bulb really went on and said, look, this is actually serious business. You're responsible for somebody's most precious thing, which is their health.
Yeah.
And I think over the years, working with great people, good mentors, good sponsors, and they become your role models, right? And one thing that the big extended family that we have in India, everybody takes pride in what they do. And I think that's really the cornerstone is really awesome. Take pride in what you do and enjoy the journey.
Yeah, enjoying the journey, that's such an important part of it too. Yeah. And if I can say anything about you, you certainly are able to do that and really galvanize our kind of local population and that of the ones globally. So that's awesome. You mentioned about mentors and role models. I mean, you've become such a huge mentor and role model for me, and so for so many other people. What does that mean to you?
I think I think the most gratifying thing that in life is actually being able to be with learners and be a learner, right? Like a lifelong learner. So contrary to what everybody thinks is when you give, you get a lot more back. Yeah. If ever anybody thinks that, I'm giving my time or I'm doing this, you get a lot more back. And so to give you an example of what being a mentor means to me, or what being in a learning environment means to me, it means a lot. So I tell people, if you're an academic surgeon, there are a couple of different aspects, right? You got to be good at your clinical care, and then you got to teach and train, and you got to do research and innovate for the next generation. And that's what we typically talk about academic surgeon. So if people allow me to choose only one, contrary to what a lot of people think, because the world knows me as a researcher, as someone that contributes to innovation and knowledge, I would probably choose number one, be still at this point in time, be a care provider. And if they ask me to choose a very close number two, would be in a learning environment, way before I think about research. So having trainees, be it residents, now we have a lot of fellows, is probably the biggest joy of my life, is to be with them And contrary to what people think, I actually learn a lot from them. To give you an example, everybody goes through phases in terms of burnout and others. And I don't know if we talked about this before. I keep telling people like how you have a relationship or marriage itch of 5 to 7 years that people go through some troubles, and if you come out stronger on the other end, you never look back. So I went through that myself, and the two people that actually told me I was becoming cynical. I'm a positive person, but all I talk is as the world is going to end tomorrow. Is actually two trainees. So Gerard Slobodin, who a lot of people know, he was a second-year resident, and he told me 2 weeks after one of the fellows now, Ranjit Varghese, and Ranjit is in US, he's in Baltimore, and Johns Hopkins. So Ranjit told me, Kish, I see a lot of negative talk from you that I never used to see that before. 2 weeks later, Gerard takes me out for coffee. He said, can I buy you coffee? I'm like, Gerard's buying me coffee. I said, okay. And he says, Kish, there's something going on. You know, I think you gotta look after yourself. And those two conversations have really got me to reflect on what my wife has been telling me, what Bindu was telling me for years. It's like, you're a positive person, but all you talk is negative, you know, in recent times. So I think that's the power. As much as you think, if you talk to them, they'll tell you that I'm their mentor. But as far as I'm concerned, they were my mentors during that time. Totally. They supported me through a time where I was going through a difficult time.
And that's the value of a true relationship, right? It's two ways. Absolutely. It's not unidirectional. And just like, as you said, Gerard, a second-year resident, asking their attending to bring them out to a coffee, that's unreal.
Yeah, I think that, again, goes to the thing, Adrian, I tell people, is we have to play down our positions and our roles. Only then people really open up. So contrary to what people think, learning comes from hierarchy. You learn the best when you create an environment where people are not afraid to work with you, and differentiating respect and fear. So all the people that you ever worked with, there are some incredible surgeons I've worked with. I was scared to work with them. I wish it was a bit more relaxed environment to learn, and then I think I would have gotten a lot more out of it. So that's why, as you know, no one calls me Dr. Mulpuri.
I was just going to say, yes, that's right.
They have two choices. When they call me Dr. Mulpuri, I tell them it's my mom. And the reason I do that is I used to say it's my dad, but I never gave my grade 8 mom a chance to be a surgeon. She actually wanted to be a doctor. But her dad got her married off when she was in grade 8 at age 15. And so she had 3 kids by 19. Incredibly smart woman. So I tell everybody when they call me Dr. Mulpuri, I say that's my mom. You have 2 choices, Kish or Kishore, that's it. A medical student calls me Kish or Kishore. I don't think they respect me any less. I don't think our environment is any different when we're there. It's just that they're not afraid to knock on the door and come and talk to me.
I know from personal experience that you really lived that, because even as a department head, you're one of the most accessible people I know, and so everything you're saying, it's very reassuring, because you have, I know from firsthand experience, again, you've talked me through a lot of these things you're talking about, which is I'm very, very grateful for. So on that topic of these respectful environments, you've created a wonderful environment at Children's Hospital, you know, a thriving fellowship program with international trainees everywhere, the Hippie Lab. How do you go about creating an environment like that, but also recruiting the right people? Because you have this incredible ability to create networks, not just of informal contacts, but people who really want to be engaged and make a difference. How do you do that?
So, Adrian, I think it's over the years just watching and observing people and learning from them as to how do they build teams, right? So I'm really inspired by this philosophy of dolphins, right? Okay. So I tell people about there are 3 kinds of people, or carps, bottom feeders. Okay. You tell them to do something, they do it, otherwise they don't. Right. And then you have sharks, go-getters, goal-oriented. Right. They don't mind eating their own. Yes. But if they need to, if somebody comes in their line of fire, they'll take anybody down. And you have dolphins. Dolphins work in teams. You never see a dolphin alone. right? And together, though, dolphins take sharks on,
Yeah.
and when situation needs, they actually become carbs.
Yes.
But you never see a dolphin alone, right? So to me, that's where what you need to do is number one, make it flat, rather than say, well, I'm the big boss, I'm the big researcher. That's why the lab that I'm a part of, if you actually look at, most people would be called it's like, Hong Lab, or Mulpuri Lab, or something else. But ours is called Hippie Lab. So everybody that's a part of it has equal chance to recognize themselves with that as a leader. And several of them that are part of it are leaders, not just locally, but nationally and globally, right? An example is Emily Schaefer, who leads our research program. I don't think there is a pediatric orthopedic surgeon that's involved in some form of research that doesn't know who Dr. Schaefer is.
Cool.
Same with Stacy Miller, who runs our, a clinical program, which is our hip supplements program for children with CP. She was on the board of ASCPDM within 6 years of becoming a member. When I go to a cerebral palsy and developmental medicine meeting, often she's introducing me to surgeons that I've never met before.
Oh, cool.
Right? So, and she's a physiotherapist. And really bringing it down to a level where we're all equal partners in trying to do something.
Yeah.
Right? So to me, I think that takes a bit of time. And Stacy, when we started thinking about hip supplements program in 2009, there was none that exists in North America at that point in time. There was only 4 programs in the world.
Wow.
And she's like, Kishore, I don't know if it will ever get there.
Yeah.
I said, well, we'll keep trying.
Yeah.
2015, when we launched the program, she gave me a Christmas gift. It's a little plaque, which is in my office. Whenever you come, you'll actually see it's right there. It says, it's kind of fun to do the impossible, Walt Disney.
Awesome.
So that was Walt Disney's.
Yes.
And
That's awesome.
But Nelson Mandela said it, the same thing in a very different way.
Okay.
He said it's only impossible till it's done. So if you as a leader believe that something can be done and be positive, it doesn't matter how big the task is, and when you get to that, you don't achieve everything that you set out to do, but when you do that, it gives confidence to others around to do more, right? And to achieve more, and to be a part of a team, not individual, but part of a team where the team takes a lot of pride in doing what they do.
Yeah, that's incredible. You've led UBC recently through this major strategic rebrand, and it involves a lot of the things you've spoken about. But one of the things that I've really loved is that whole idea of local to global. Yeah. And so what does that mean to you?
Well, I mean, honestly, it means a lot. The reason I say is I'm here because of Canadian taxpayers that are actually supporting me to do my job. So whatever I do, I got to be relevant locally. So for example, if I'm doing programs that are not making an impact to children of British Columbia, when I work at BC Children's Hospital, at the same time, if I'm doing any education initiatives, if they are not impacting our learners in UBC and in Canada, it makes no sense. So most of it, what we do, I wouldn't say 100%, but I would say 90% of what we do is incredibly locally relevant or impacting one way or the other our local communities, our local learners, local whatever. But if you go a little bit beyond our own country with a little extra effort, where most people stop is with 5 countries, which is US, Australia, New Zealand, and England.
I see.
You look at most fellowship programs anywhere, our most master's program, PhD, in the current day when people talk about equity, diversity, inclusion,
Yes.
you think of a lot of the leaders that talk about that and go back and say, hey, tell me your last 5 years fellows.
Yes,
And they often come from these 5 countries. Yes. So we in UBC should really be proud when we're actually doing this now for our external review report. In the last 5 years, we had fellows from 34 different countries.
Wow.
In the last 3 years, our 28 to 30 fellows came from 17 different countries, and 14 different countries.
Wow.
So the impact is, once we go beyond Canada, we're really engaging with the rest of the world. Our taxpayers are not paying us to say, okay, only collaborate with the first world.
Yes.
So we, as a group now, as a hippie lab, we don't get involved with anything that's not relevant to 80% of the world.
Cool.
In the past, most of our research collaborations were with 8% of the world.
Interesting.
Right? If you
Wow.
think about the population of US, Australia, New Zealand, and
Yes.
England, it's 8% of the world.
That's unreal.
So why wouldn't you be, especially if it's your volunteer time, like everything you're doing, Adrian, now this is your volunteer time. You're donating your time to our national organization to try and start a dialogue and on some really important topics. Why would you do that if it's going to be relevant only to 8% of the world when you can actually make it to 80, 90% of the world? So that's the whole concept of local to global. But what's really important though, a lot of people probably don't get this because we don't talk about it, is actually global back to local. That we have several stories where our learnings globally have improved care for us or improved things for us here. One good example is during pandemic, everything is shut down, research is shut down, clinical activities are down, and we had an opportunity to work with 9 large organizations in India that never worked together to create a care pathway for developmental dysplasia of the hip.
Amazing.
It's led by Dr. Arujis from Mumbai. He reached out and said, hey, Kishore and Emily, can you help us with this Delphi process? So what that meant was 40 Zoom calls at all different times.
Yeah.
Their Sunday afternoon is like our Saturday night.
Right.
And if you think, well, Kishore is crazy enough to do those kind of things, but I have incredible people that truly care about it.
Yeah.
So Stacy, who's a physiotherapist, was developing the CP care pathway. She often had a daughter sitting with her when she's doing a Zoom call on a Sunday morning or Saturday night. And that care pathway development is actually informing us now to develop our own care pathway in Canada and in British Columbia. So that's a story of how from locally, whatever knowledge we had, we helped India to develop its care pathway. The learnings about the process and how we've done is now helping us in Canada to develop our own, right? So this again goes to when you give, you get a lot more back.
Yeah. What a really cool perspective on global orthopedics. So you've been able to attract these trainees and fellows and colleagues from all over the world, train here, and then send them out and naturally develop these associations with them. That is very unique. So how can other centers reproduce that?
So again, I think if we take a little step back, first I said we need to be relevant in our own country. So what I'm incredibly grateful to COA, a little story about my involvement with COA. I came 2004 to present a paper. I walked into a room to present my paper, and Chris Riley actually warned me and said, Kish, you're submitting a paper to COA. He said, yeah. I went once and there were 3 people in the room. He said, there was me and the 2 moderators. I'm like, okay. So I thought, well, like I'm excited. I'm like new to this country, and I got my job as a consultant in Children's Hospital. And I walked into a room. It was a combined spine and pediatric session, 1 paper session. And there were 3 pediatric orthopedic surgeons in the audience.
No way.
Yeah. So when I finished and I had a choice, I'm like, okay, I'm going to be done. Never going to coming back to COA again, and or actually build a team here and bring a group of pediatric orthopedic surgeons in the country together that never come to these meetings. Late Lucas Monahan, and he was a resident at the time. As you know, his dad and uncle are orthopedic surgeons. He was at the meeting with his parents, and he's like, Kish, why don't we have a Canadian pediatric orthopedic surgeons come to this meeting? So why don't we build something? So he was actually instrumental in us thinking about building a group.
Yeah.
So what led after that is Doug, our CEO, previous CEO, and Cynthia, who started out new for this organization. And they're like, Kish, you tell us what you need. I said, look, could we have a room? Can we do this? And she would often include stuff. And by 2012, we had about 50 people that came to COA. Now there's about 80 to 90 that are pediatric orthopedics. So we've gone from 3, 4, 5 people coming to probably we're one of the big subspecialties that come and really celebrate being together. So 2012 in Ottawa, they were going to elect the founding president of Canadian Orthopedic Association and Canadian Pediatric Orthopedic Group. And I was walking to the meeting, and I called my son to wish him happy birthday. It was actually on June 9th in 2012, was COA, I remember the date. And he goes, Dad, Mom told me I won't see you tonight. I'm like, no, I'm coming back tonight. He said, no, but by the time your flight lands and you come, I was told it's 11 o'clock, I'll be fast asleep. I don't know what happened to me. I called Air Canada and said, do you have an earlier flight? Said, we have one in 2 hours. So I went to Sukhdeep, and Ron. I mean, three of us were trying to build this group for a long time. And I said, I'm going home. And the reaction is everything okay at home? I said, no, it's my son's birthday. And they both nodded their head. And there's Doug Hedden, who was quite involved with Canadian orthopedics for a while. He was with Royal College. He was spine surgeon in sick kids, but then worked was head of surgery in Edmonton. So I went and told Doug that. And Doug is like, Kish, I wish I'd done more of that in my career.
Totally.
It'll be liberating. So I got on the plane, and I have a habit of just dozing off the minute. Probably I was up too late the night before.
That's right, yeah, that's right.
And I got down, and my phone was going crazy.
Yeah.
So I was elected the founding president of Canadian Pediatric Orthopedic Group. They not only did that, they were going through the bylaws, and it said you need to be Canadian trained. I'm not Canadian trained, so they changed the bylaw.
Wow.
It said you need to be Canadian citizen. I'm still not a Canadian citizen.
Is that right?
Yeah. And so they changed that to someone who lives and works in Canada.
Amazing.
But that goes to show you do something because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And as much as people think if I'm not in the room or if I'm not there, I don't, quote unquote, get credit to be involved, that's actually not true in Canada. We're a very different country. We're a very different organization. And a lot of people don't realize how special Canada is, how special Canadian orthopedics is. And to me, that really helps and motivates you to get involved in these and to build these teams and celebrate. And what that did is gave us an opportunity to now engage with different hospitals, children's hospitals. So we have trained the most number of pediatric orthopedic surgeons in Canada in the last 10 years. We had about 33 fellows that are Canadians that come. Contrary to what everybody thinks, well, we're global. No, we're local first. We're very relevant in Canada, and then we go around the world. But all of these different perspectives, whether our fellows came from, say, Halifax, or they came from London, Ontario, or from Toronto, or from Winnipeg, we learn immensely from them because they're bringing stuff that's different than, in some ways than what we do. But now if you take that to some of our fellows in the last couple of years from Uganda, from Rwanda, from India, Kuwait, you name it, and the perspective we get from them, Australia, New Zealand, is incredible. And to me, that's what keeps it fresh.
And so now, as a past president, you've been through it now, but going through the carousel and having these networks, again, with all these other countries, as well as all the work with USTOP and everything we have going on, is that the next level of this local to global? Is that how we're going to extend this, like you said, past those 5 countries?
Yeah. So I think, Adrian, what I tell people is, you think about whatever is your professional golf. Yes, right. Right? So a lot of people in the wellness era now, a lot of people think about wellness means you only do stuff you get paid for. If you're not getting paid for it, don't do it. Contrary, what I tell them is, okay, let's think about this. When you go and play tennis or golf, or you're going out for dinner, or do you think it's a waste of time? Because you're not getting paid, you're actually spending.
That's right.
Same way professionally, if there are aspects of the work you do, please don't give that up. In thinking that's wellness, no. Wellness doesn't mean you work less. Wellness is, of course, look after yourself, take care of yourself, put your family first, which a lot of us, often forget and take people for granted. They're the most important people in your life. And certainly I need to keep reminding myself, anytime I'm taking a big project on, what's the impact it's going to be on you and your family? but don't give up on the stuff that you love to do. So the reason I've given this preamble for this question is, for me, I'm incredibly selfish.
Okay.
Right? I wake up in the morning, I want to look at the mirror and feel good about who I am.
Right.
You know, being involved globally and being involved where the opportunity to make a difference is a lot more. For example, if I'm fine-tuning a system, is it, you know, this cast versus that material? You know, you're probably looking at a 5% difference in outcomes.
Right.
But if you're working in communities and or on projects where you're taking something from 30% to 70, it's huge.
Yeah.
So for me, the analogy I give to people is: do you go to the gym, lift a 2-pound weight?
Yes.
Do you go to gym and lift a 15-pound weight?
Yes.
If you really want to grow, you're going to take harder things that are not easy.
Yeah.
But that's what gives you the most amount of joy. So for me and for us as an opportunity is, especially with your volunteer efforts and time, if you have an opportunity to get involved, learn, but contribute to make a big difference in areas that don't have the resources and opportunities we have, I think that's incredibly fulfilling and gratifying. And I think that is a huge opportunity for us in all of these countries. It doesn't matter where, right? Whether it's China, India, or Africa, or, you know, parts of South America, that resources are not, you know, are not as readily available as we have. If we can share whatever we have, either be it through knowledge or getting them involved in research. So my advice to people is, they go, well, I've got a young family, I can't travel as much. Global medicine or global orthopedics, you don't need to travel. The most impactful work we did is working with India to develop that care pathway, which now is taken on by UNICEF to implement in India. And we didn't travel at all.
Yeah.
We were here.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in global surgery,
Yeah.
get involved.
Yeah.
Don't think that you need to travel, or also don't think about, oh, I cannot do what Dr. Pirani did, which is the gold standard, where he took
The Shafiq Pirani.
Shafiq Pirani,
Yeah,
he
right.
took a public health approach to clubfoot and made a huge impact around the world. That takes a lot of time and effort, and that I would call it as a gold standard. I mean, the man is a superhero,
Absolutely.
right? But there are other ways. If you could only do one, where you're able to do a teaching module and send it to someplace, or you're able to go there and volunteer, or you're able to send some resources to that place. Whatever you do, that is helpful.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter at the scale at which you can do, but just being engaged and involved and wanting to contribute is going to make a huge difference.
Incredible. I love that perspective. Thank you so much for that. Before we finish off, is there anything in your professional career, your personal life, that you want to advertise or put out there for the listeners?
Well, all I would say is life is a journey. It's a beautiful journey.
Yeah.
Enjoy it. And one thing that you've heard many times, Adrian, is this whole concept of ikigai, which is reason for being,
Yeah.
where the intersection between, you know, what you get paid, what you're good at, that gives you a profession. And then if you love what you do, which most of us do, is it gives you a passion. What a lot of people are missing is what the world needs, which gives you your mission and vocation. What the world needs could be, for example, Pierre is championing climate change and getting us to be really thinking about how can we reduce the waste and other things that we do in orthopedics. And, you know, so it doesn't all have to be related to what you do in orthopedics. It could be giving back to your local community, giving back to your church, temple, mosque, or whatever your religious thing that brings people together, to any cause. My advice to people is, what brings me the biggest joy is the ability to give. Ability to give is your superpower. Please use your superpower.
Yeah.
And if there are two things that I can think of, if we could ever give an award of something, it is for kindness and generosity. And those two, I think, really are your superpowers. And be eternally positive and optimistic. And those things, if ever when things are getting tough, you think about positive things in life, trust me, that'll move you forward.
Yeah.
So I have no personal thing that I want to promote, to be honest with you. The only thing I want to promote is for people to enjoy what they do.
Yeah.
And it's, we're all fortunate to be where we are, and let's work together with the concept of stronger together.
Amazing, I love it. Thank you for your continued leadership. Thank you for your passion and your excitement. And personally, thank you for being a wonderful mentor and giving us all these opportunities. We really appreciate you and your time today.
And Adrian, so I want to say, this is again, we learn a lot from you. You are one of the most influential persons, I would say, in Canadian orthopedics, with your following through scrubbed out of, 27,000 and growing. But the stuff that you're putting it out there is a way for other people to learn. Mm-hmm. Gone are the days in the past, we communicated only through publishing in journals. Mm-hmm. Now, people want to see things in a touch of a button.
Absolutely.
And we're so fortunate in Canadian orthopedics to have you. And also personally for me to have access to someone like you at UBC and all the amazing work you do. Thank you for what you do.
Our pleasure, thank you so much. And last thing, sorry, I forgot to say, if people want to reach out to you, how do they do that?
As my email, I think most people have, kishore.mulpuri@ubc.ca. You know me, I'd love to talk to people, I'd love to connect with people, and looking forward to our continued conversation.
Thank you again, we really appreciate it.